A new report about the Uvalde, Texas elementary school massacre reveals a police officer asked for permission to shoot the gunman, but got no answer. The report released Wednesday by Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center at Texas State University includes a detailed timeline and more information about the shooting at Robb Elementary School on May 24th that led to the deaths of 19 students and 2 teachers. The findings indicate the officer had a rifle and asked his supervisor if he could shoot the suspect, but the supervisor either did not hear or responded too late. And according to the report, some of the 21 victims could have been saved if medical attention had been received sooner. Law enforcement waited over an hour before breaching the classroom. Also, the 26-page report used video from the school, police body cameras, information from the interviews with officers who were on the scene, and other statements from investigators. So let's talk about this with our panel a little bit. Obviously, we had this tragedy just a few weeks ago, Will, and one of many multiple tragedies in the United States in terms of shootings, and just recently this weekend. So what are your thoughts about this report? Let's start with Robert. What are your thoughts about the findings from this report?
The more information that comes out, the more troubling it becomes, primarily because law enforcement lied to us. In the direct aftermath of the shooting, everything that they said for a solid week were nothing but lies, nothing but them covering their own tails in order to try to make themselves seem like not being the villains in the situation. I don't want to obscure and obfuscate from the conversation that has to be had around mental health and gun control, getting guns away from crazy people who can just walk in and buy them immediately and walk out and start shooting people. But at the same time, law enforcement has a duty to protect and to serve. And it seems that they have no problem shooting a black man 90 times, hitting him 60 times during a traffic stop. But somehow when there's a crazed gunman locked in a room full of people, well, now they're actually in danger, so you don't act, you don't respond. Yes, there are, of course, extenuating circumstances that may have resulted in the failure to authorize this officer to take the shot. But at the end of the day, this officer probably should have jumped over the chain of command and just took the shot at the end in order to end the situation. There's always going to be red tape. There's always going to be bureaucratic problems, but we have to have some sort of trust in law enforcement, not to just simply come out and lie to us. And at the end of the day, every single police shooting that we see in this country, often the first response of law enforcement is to lie to the public. And in this situation where they clearly failed at their jobs, they immediately went to their first instinct, which is to lie to the public to try to cover their tracks. And I think that is the part that we have to investigate and change as far as police culture goes, this culture of lying to the public to cover your tails, because now in 2022, everything is on video, and it's a lot harder to make up this stuff going forward.
Robert, you hit on some really important points, and that's why we have Lauren to kind of provide our insight on this about the information that police officers provide and then how the media reports that. Because the criticism, especially of the last couple of years, has been, particularly when it comes to police shooting, Robert mentioned police shootings of black people, is that they provide some information. George Floyd is an example among others. They provide some information. We get that from law enforcement. The media, goes with it, and then we find out everyone has to do a 360. So, Lauren, what are your thoughts about this report, and particularly in terms of, like I said, we see that it looks like what's happening in Texas was a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel like to a large extent, the Uvalde police and some of the associated agencies, they had U.S. Border Patrol there that had some pretty good hardware. They had AK-47 style and AR-15 style rifles, and they didn't do anything. I almost want to say this is just a very strange, weird aberration, because I cannot imagine another police department acting with this level of just an absurd level of incompetence. I mean, on every level, the whole thing of just not following the basic protocol for active shooter, which has been known since Columbine. So, we're almost 20 years into that. It's sort of it's not like, I understand Uvalde is a small town. So we want to understand that, of course, they would not necessarily be dealing with this type of crazy lunatic event on any sort of regular basis. But at the same time, they did have they did have enough personnel, and that personnel did, in fact, have the type of weaponry necessary to deal with this type of situation, and they didn't do it. And so it feels like, I mean, I don't want to say it's a fluke, but I can't imagine this happening in any other department in the United States, really. I'm not sure why that's the case with Uvalde and nobody else, but this guy, Pete Arredondo, is clearly a dummy, and I don't understand why this is the case, that this department in Texas, which is known for guns and Texas and we're big and we're tough and all this other stuff, doesn't seem to make any real sense. But when you look at the video from that day, they had plenty of opportunity to intervene, and for some strange reason they didn't. And with regard to, the police putting out false information, sure, that happens a lot, but if you see the Highland Park shooter, you notice that in that case, that department is putting out information that is embarrassing to that department. They had contacts with that shooter since 2019, and they're telling the public that. They're not trying to hide it. They're not trying to act like, well, we didn't have any contact with this guy. No, they're saying it. They're actually being pretty transparent. I've actually seen, too, the New York City Police Department, believe it or not, do that, too, where they've just admitted. They've had a few shootings where they just admitted this person should not have been shot. It was a mistake. It's rare that it happens, but it does actually happen. In the case of 19 kids being murdered and cops waiting outside the door for an hour, this department should have admitted, weeks ago that they made a massive, massive mistake. Somebody made a massive mistake in judgment. We think it's Pete Arredondo. That's actually hard to figure out because, of course, he's not talking. So, we've got this problem of having to pull out the information. And as Robert said, of course, correctly, they lied from the very beginning, and then they got uncovered by the press, which was tremendously embarrassing and just so unnecessary. I mean, this woman that we've seen, the mother of the two children that had to run in and get her kids and is begging the cops to, give me your weapon and I'll go in and do. I mean, that's just completely embarrassing. And I cannot imagine. I don't think we've seen anything like it in law enforcement. I can't think of another example.
Yeah, Lauren, you highlighted some really important points, and particularly talk about Highland. And obviously the police had contact, you said previously, with this killer. And then, unfortunately, we saw the result this a few days ago. But in terms of what happened in Texas, we're certainly hopeful that we don't see this kind of terrible response from law enforcement. So it'll be interesting to see what additional information comes out. As you said, some people are closed lip as it relates to really providing more information, talking to the public about why this failure occurred. And we're certainly hopeful that this doesn't occur in any other U.S. jurisdiction in the future. So,
and one point that I would make as far as why they may not have wanted to take the shot, as they say, in this situation where you have an active open shot at the shooter. What they'll say that I'm pretty sure the police department probably had an AR-15 with about a 16-inch barrel, which is standard. So, hold on. So with your AR, normally you have this risk of over-penetration.
Robert's got props for today.
Hey, look, they stay in here. But look, if you have this risk of over-penetration, which is if they're using a full metal jacketed bullet, which they probably had loaded in there, you have the risk that it can go directly through the individual and hit one of the children. So that might have been the reason they did not want to take the shot at that time in a crowded classroom. If they had hollow point bullets, then you have risk deformation, which is where it will hit something, mushroom out, and then not have penetrating power thereafter, which would alert the shooter that people are shooting at him, which may inspire him to shoot people in the classroom. So it's a tough decision to be made. But at the end of the day, tell us that from the beginning. Don't wait months down the line to come out and say whether or not you that's the reasoning went to your decision making. Because if you don't do so, it becomes very difficult for the public to have any trust in anything you're saying.
Yeah. So we're dealing with the cover up, and so we live in a society we live in. Anytime there's something occurs and there's some kind of cover up, undoubtedly the media, through public information requests, interviewing other people and investigators, usually get to the bottom of this. And unfortunately, like I said, this report points to what we've seen in some of the discussions, that there was a failure by law enforcement. And hopefully, like I said earlier, that we won't see this kind of failure in the future.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built-in.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?